Hi, and welcome to today's episode. Thanks for joining today to listen to what I know is going to be an absolutely fantastic conversation, because it's a topic I am very passionate about and it's part of the values I have at Life Now Coaching. So to help me have this conversation, I'm joined by Kimberley Stacey, who is someone I know locally, and we're going to dive into the topic of diet culture and fitness. And Kimberley is the founder and head coach of Body Image Fitness in Newcastle, and she advocates non-diet fitness and that anybody can work out and be fit regardless of how their body looks. So let's get stuck into this conversation. But just before we do, I want to ask you, Kim, what your own most impactful healthy habit is.
Oh, that's a very good question. I think that it's balance, and I know that word can be very overrated, but I think it's finding a good work-life balance, enough sleep. I know you're asking for one habit, but it's very difficult. Probably, I'd say trying to make sure that there's plenty of time to rest, as well as move, and and plenty of sleep, I'd say, which I'm not getting at the moment, hence the bags under my eyes.
Balance is a really good word. It's a very powerful word, isn't it? Because when we think about health, it's easy to get into one lane and think of one thing you have to do, even if it was the sleep. But I like how you've said, balance, and just having that awareness of trying to be as balanced as you can, to be active, to be restful. And
I think as well, I think it's just not beating yourself up. Say, that one day is going to be more balanced than others. And I think it's just having that compassion, that self-compassion, that, okay, well, what can I do tomorrow that's a bit better than I did today? And just looking at it like that, rather than like this all or nothing approach that a lot of us can and have and do have.
Yeah, absolutely. And I say that compassion is the missing piece of the wellness puzzle, because we need to be compassionate in so many different senses with ourselves. And I think that really helps people, if they are embedding other healthy habits into their life, to bring it all together really nicely and get that full benefit. So I think a good place to start to get us going in the conversation we want to have is for you to share why you started Body Image Fitness, what your story was that led you to do what you're doing today.
So I have always loved fitness ever since I was at school. I was doing A-level PE, and I was, wanting to do it as a career. But at the same time, I was dieting like many people. My weight was, my body was changing. I was obviously still growing and developing, and but I've always been naturally very curvy, and especially when I was much younger, I developed a lot quicker than my the other girls at school. So I always felt like my body was not good enough, or my body was a problem, and because I always thought that if I can't control my weight, then who am I to be teaching fitness? And obviously I know now that was the wrong idea and the wrong view of it, but I carried on, enjoying fitness because of the way that it makes me feel. I went off a different career path, and then COVID hit, and I took that time to work on my own mental health. I started looking at body image, and at this point I was very, very a hell of a lot slimmer than what I am now. I was the slimmest I'd ever been. I was that was because I was sort of heavily disordered eating, and exercise, just addicted to exercise. Like, it got to a point where it was really, really, really bad. And I then was just like starting to look into doing fitness as a career then, because I was like, it's a good excuse to be able to carry on doing this, because just to kind of hide my, which then I thought were healthy habits. And because I did so much work, I kind of went down a little bit of a rabbit hole though, and started discovering that actually what I was doing wasn't actually healthy. It wasn't actually going to like benefiting me physically and mentally. It was too extreme. And so I ended up, as I say, doing a lot of work on myself, and realized that actually my body is good enough to do fitness. And so that's why the business is called Body Image Fitness. So.
And you touched on a couple of times there that I know we wanted to explore around body image and diet culture. And you and I have chatted a lot about this before, and we're very similar, like a lot of women, in the sense of having grown up probably from quite a young age. I think for me it was maybe about 12, 13, being aware of your size and shape and dieting, and just then grown in adulthood with that whole diet culture, such a massive part of your life and such a huge piece of trying to be happy. And that's the struggle, isn't it? That so many women are stuck in that diet culture of, believing that you have to look and weigh a certain number on the scales to be worthy, to be enough. And that's certainly my backstory. I spent definitely over 30 years really desperate to lose weight, to finally be happy. And like you, there were a couple of times in my life where I'd lost the weight, I was standing on them scales at the weekly weighing club. It was like, yes, I've done it. And actually I did feel better, but it wasn't in a sustainable way. And I wasn't living in a healthy way either. Certainly with exercise, it was a punishment. And so, you touched on that, and that's a good topic I'd like to explore a bit more, is, how so many people, and this isn't just for women, but we're talking specifically a bit about our story here in women, like how they exercise to fix something that's wrong, don't they? Often their weight, and how was that for you? And you said you were addicted to exercise. Were you exercising to like offset the calories you were eating on the type of food you were eating?
I think it was purely because from a space of just not feeling good enough, and no matter how much weight I lost, I still, and actually it was having a even more detrimental effect on my body image. So I think it was too, because you're sold that lie of like, oh well, once you get to this weight, or once you look like this, then everything, all your problems will be solved, and you will be good enough, and you will be attractive, and you will find a partner, and you will be successful. And and I just kept on chasing that. But yeah, the motto of Body Image Fitness is your body is not the problem, and I really, really feel that deeply, because
Mm.
you know it's so many other things that are the problem. Our bodies are amazing in the way that they look after us, and I think that the way that, especially growing up in the sort of the 90s and the noughties, you get bombarded with all of this, just rubbish of that you have to be one size, and actually it's society that's the problem. It's sometimes our mindset, which is from society, telling us that we're not good enough, and it's all done to sell us a product, to sell us this dream. And because the thing is as well is that you'll hear a lot of the time people saying, oh, diets don't work, and the high percentage of diets do work, but short term, and long term, it for a lot of people it has detrimental effects, and it's just looking at ways to feel better about yourself, which doesn't include restriction and punishment. And because that, when you talk about health, it's got to include mental health, because otherwise what's the point? You can't have
Mm.
mental health without physical health. vice versa, I believe anyway.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And what you said there about trying and believing that the weight loss was going to bring all of those different things you wanted for yourself, but actually, even when you had hit the weight goal you had, not feeling that stuff you thought you were going to get, and realizing that, this was about something else, something much more deep rooted in you and how you are. And do you think that is really linked to diet culture and what society perceives women should be in terms of, the full package of a woman?
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, I think there's a lot of elements to it, and I think everyone's got their own sort of personal stories of, you know, but I think that the way that society's set up, and as I say, especially growing up in the 90s and noughties, it was very heavily, promoted. So yeah, but I think there's I've had sort of very negative experiences with family members growing up as well, and that impacts it. And there's different relationships in my life that have impacted it. So there's lots and lots of different
Mm,
layers to it, and I don't think you can ever really blame it just on one thing and just say, right, society's made me like this, and not actually really understand that there are other layers. But I think that if society wasn't as bad as it was in terms of weight loss, then I think that we'd all be a hell of a lot happier and healthier. I really, really believe that. And because it's there's this I don't know if you've heard of normative discontent. It's a phrase where it's just become normal as a society, especially in women, to be discontent with your body, and that's
mm,
just the norm. And that's not something I'm willing to accept, really. From a
mm.
business point of view, um,
Yeah.
just or even just from a person in the world, it's not it's not how we should be. We shouldn't just be as a baseline everybody discontent. What kind of a world is that?
Mm. So, like, just sticking on that diet culture topic, I think it's a word probably a lot of people listening are familiar with. But how would you like describe diet culture, and do you think it's shifted from how it was 20, 30 years ago? You're a lot younger than me. Do you think there's been any change from in the past to where we
I
are
think
today?
I mean diet culture is basically, as the name suggests, it's the whole culture surrounding diet. So it doesn't refer to like Slimming World, or it refers to the whole narrative around weight loss and equating to health, and it kind of attaches moral value to food and what's good and what's bad, and and to exercise, and all of this stuff. And it actually, I did a post this morning on my Instagram talking about, once you step away from diet culture, it's not just simply stepping away from and making the decision, I'm not going to diet anymore. It actually helps you then become more compassionate, become more accepting, and actually view food as nourishment, and view exercise as a privilege and as a joy, rather than calories and how much I've got to burn and punishment. And it just, and then as a result, it just makes you become so much more confident in your everyday life, and it filters down to then to everything and impacts you, and it helps you see where you're going to put your energy, and into certain things and into certain people, what kind of relationships you want. And I do think that the last couple of years, diet culture is shifting, because I feel like what we were saying before we pressed record, um, I feel like people generally, especially businesses, are steering away from the term diet in terms of like, oh well, we're not a diet, and well, they are, but they don't like being sort of, they don't like using that term, because it has such negative connotations for so many people. And so I feel like there's a lot of diets in disguise, and there's a lot of this, the concept's still there, but also I think because of the rise of like Ozempic, and I think that there is an understanding, and more of an understanding, that actually it's a lot more complex than we originally thought when it comes to weight science. However, there's still this push on these, these drugs that, I mean, I don't know enough about them to sort of go talk in depth. I feel like it's shifting the narrative, and it's shifting more towards sort of like big pharma and the medicine, rather than potentially, calories in, calories out. I think sometimes I feel like I'm in a bit of a bubble though, because I think a lot of the people that I follow online, and a lot, with the job that I do, primarily I'm talking to people that are of the same ethos as me, and that are stepping away from this whole kind of like, we must lose weight at all costs type narrative. So I'm not sure fully what's actually going on in the real world, because sometimes I just want to like, yeah. But I don't know. How do you feel like it's shifting?
I was thinking about this as you were talking there, Kim. No, I don't. My daughter's 16, and in some ways, I feel as though that generation are more savvy about everything. Do you know, like, especially when it comes to who you are, being enough, like being empowered, that you can do anything, achieve anything, make a difference, which I think is amazing. And I think there is this, I say, this exciting approach to feminism in that generation, which is great. But alongside that, I do think diet culture is still huge. I've got nieces that sort of age, 16 and 18, and know of younger girls, and I sadly think it's still there. And then when I look at people who I come across, potential clients or clients themselves, and friends, and just people I know of around that maybe kind of mid-30s to 50-ish age range, and actually even older than that, they're still obsessed with their weight. So many women are still, even into their 60s. And I, in fact, had a conversation with a woman just a week or so ago in her 70s, who was still talking about going on a diet to look good in a holiday in June. Like, it's still there, and whether percentage-wise there's been any shift, and it's less than what it used to be, I don't know, but it feels as though for me it's still a big thing. I just think there's more awareness now of that. Like, when I was young, there was no talk of diet culture and self-worth and being enough. So I think there's more of a 360-degree approach, but it's still about, even as you said, with the Ozempic and other weight loss drugs, it's still all, well, they're not manufactured to just help women to look a certain way. They're I think that could be a very beneficial thing, which is a whole other conversation. For some people who really need them medically. We know that obesity is a risk to our health, so I think there are opportunities there. But when you have women buying them privately to lose £10, that's not what they're for, and that's being done because they still believe they will feel good and happy when they've lost those £10 off the scale. So it's in the word diet, let's talk about that, because diet as a word, is it a noun? I don't know what type of word it is. It's like it can mean so many things, and I've spoken out about this. And my approach is, we all have a diet. Every living creature has to have a diet to survive. So I want to try and switch what the meaning of the word diet is to being something you go on temporarily to fix what you think is a problem, to just being a part of that health toolkit. Well, it's your diet. Your diet is your diet. You're not going on a diet, but yeah, shifting that culture, that belief away from a diet being something you do to help yourself be happy or conform or be worthy.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the term obesity there, and that term itself is becoming quite controversial. And I think a lot of the work that I've done, which we can talk about with the NHS towards sort of weight stigma, the term obesity refers to the BMI scale, and it is a very oversimplified way to look at health. And I think it carries the word itself, obesity, carries a hell of a lot of stigma, because it refers that people's body sizes are a disease. And health is so multifaceted, and there's so many layers to it. And there are some aspects to obesity that I'm not saying that you can be healthy at every size, but there isn't a one size fits all to health. And I think it's very complex when it comes to terms like obesity and things. And that, I think it's difficult as well, because you've got people like me who've been dieting their whole lives. I'm a fairly active person. I'm classed as obese, and I would say that I'm the healthiest I've ever been. And if I personally, because of the way that my body is, I'm naturally very curvy. If you just look at my genetics from my mother and that side of the family, if I was to get into the normal category of the BMI, I would, even when I was very, very ill and I was heavily disordered eating, exercise addiction, I still was only just tapping into the normal. And I think as well, you've got to look at the whole BMI and scale and where it's come from and the roots of it. And it was never actually designed to look at individuals' health. It was to do with the population, to like look at the population of sizes. And I think it's just been, this term is become quite problematic. I've gone off on a tangent there. I'm sorry. I just
No,
wanted
that's all
to.
right. Yeah,
It's difficult.
The BMI is something that I hear lots of doctors and scientists talking about is very outdated, and it's very one-dimensional but not informative in an accurate way. And I know from me, I've always been at that higher level, and just a few months ago, when I'd had to do something with the doctor and my weight was checked, and it's like, oh, you're right at the top end. And I was like, okay, that could be quite damaging for someone, because I think I'm very normal and I know I'm very healthy. And so to say to someone, oh, actually, you're almost, or I think maybe I was classed as overweight, it can be damaging. But like we say, that's a big conversation in itself. And I know obesity, there's kind of different
hard
uses of the word now, isn't there? And so on. But I think it's around the diet piece, to stay on kind of that track, it's helping people to know that a diet isn't something you dip in and out of to try to fix yourself. There's kind of two elements to it. One is linked to that self-worth and being good enough and the happiness and I guess the mental deep-rooted beliefs we have around what looking a certain way will give us in our life. But then on the other side is, not, I think, understanding and valuing the role that nutrition plays in your life and your overall health. And that's one piece of the puzzle, along with moving your body, the fitness side and sleep, as you mentioned at the start, and your stress and relationships, even your financial, like all of those different things come together to determine your health. But nutrition has such a big part to play, and yet a lot of people are not aware of that and are only thinking about food in the terms of what comes in and what goes out, and just trying to maintain weight. But I really want people to see it as so much more than that. As you say, it's, anti-diet. Like, we're not going on a diet. We're not trying to,
Yeah.
carry on with this roller coaster ride of how we eat to try to look a certain way and valuing
Yeah.
food for what it really does to us.
Yeah, I definitely think people's relationships with food is so complex, and I think that once we can start looking at food as as I said before, as nourishment, and is this food going to benefit me for what I've got to do today? Is this going to fuel me? Is it actually going to make me feel good? Um, and I think once you stop the heavy restriction and telling yourself, I'm not allowed that, or I've been good, or like, it may, but I do a lot of work with intuitive eating, with body image fitness, and it's kind of part of it is almost giving you that unconditional permission to eat, which terrifies a lot of people who have been on diets all their life, because they're like, no, and there's this whole terrified of gaining weight, because they've been told their whole lives that's the worst thing possible that could ever happen to you, and actually it's really, really not. And once you take away that, and you actually allow yourself to eat that, that particular packet of crisps or cookies, and it doesn't become so big, and then you forget that you've got it in the house, and and you have to get to that point. You have to go through a process, but then you start making decisions around food, or if you see a donut, or if you see an apple, you're going to make the decision. Sometimes the donut's going to win because you just fancy a donut, and that's absolutely okay. That's not good. That's not bad. But sometimes you go for the apple, and it's like, it's not really a big deal. And the more you make it a big deal and a big issue, the more it's just going to play into those anxieties. And then you've got to think, well, is that healthy? If you're going to start to be anxious around food all the time, and I think eventually you end up just settling. And I think if diets didn't exist, we'd all be intuitive eaters anyway. And it's just basically getting back to how we're supposed to be eating, without the whole commercialization and capitalism of bodies and food. And that's another podcast.
But that's ultimately diet culture's like,
Yeah.
that's the tip of the iceberg, if you like, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's all about
Yeah.
these companies making money because, as you said, the diets are not sustainable. They might work for the weight loss result in the short term, but a lot of them don't work for overall health results, and
Yeah.
they don't work for weight maintenance in the long term. And I know that's what you and I are about, is helping people to live healthy and strong long.
Yeah.
We want
Yeah.
people to make this part of who they are for the rest of their life. It's not dipping in and out. And so
No.
kind of to move on then from diet to fitness, because that's a big part of what you're doing now with body image fitness, and it links in, as you said, to helping people have that mindset switch from obsessing about the way they look to instead feeling strong physically and mentally. And
Yeah.
one of the things that I was really like fascinated about, because it resonated with me as well when we'd first met, was you saying how many people believe they can't exercise because of their size, and
Yeah.
that's a barrier that they're putting in their way. But again, it's come
Yeah.
from all of those
Yeah.
layers that have
Yeah.
gone before. So yeah, how do you support people to know that they can move their body, that they can get fit despite the size and shape that they are?
I think that there's a big problem with the fitness industry, in that it's become very sort of exclusive instead of inclusive, and it's become sort of, especially in the marketing, uh, you generally typically see with men, they tend to be very, very six pack and generally white. With women, again, thin white woman. I mean, sometimes there's ethnicity diversity, but the point is there isn't generally body diversity, and representation matters so much in when people want to engage in fitness. And if they see somebody that looks like them and able, and they're fit and they're doing this, then it makes it less intimidating. And, there's also a hell of a lot of fitness. I mean, the fitness education is all focused around, BMI and exercise for fat loss and all of this stuff. And they never, especially that education that I've taken, the courses that I've done, to begin with, they never talked about sort of the biomechanics of being in a larger body and how you would help somebody in a larger body do certain exercises and move in certain ways, and help them. And it's this assumption that, they'll get there once they lose weight, and it's like, but you need to help them now. You need to help them feel empowered now. And what if they don't lose weight? What if that's not the goal? And that's absolutely equally just as okay. Why not just focus on building their fitness and their strength, and then whatever comes as a result of that is whatever comes as a result. There's no, again, moral value attached to it. So yeah, I think there is a massive problem within the fitness industry, as I say, because it's pushing out, it's not catering to a huge amount of the population. And actually, from a business point of view, it just completely does not make sense. It's kind of like the fashion industry and plus size clothing, that there's such a need, and we make so much more money. And it's not only just good business sense, it's just ethical to just cater to people and help them become, if the fitness industry goes on about, it's all for your health, then do well help these people then. Like, you're not helping them. You're just making them feel worse. And so that's my big passion with body image fitness, is to try and sort of remove that barrier for a lot of people.
And be inclusive. And I love that, how you set that up, because you're right, it's very much set up that you've got to be thin, ripped, muscles, and that's what people will buy as well. They'll buy a personal trainer who looks the way they want to look. And obviously I'd qualified as a personal trainer a couple of years ago as well, and I was really nervous and had a lot of imposter syndrome doing that course, because I was, at the time I was 45, I was a size 12 to 14. I didn't have a flat stomach and abs or muscles, and I've always been curvy. And I just felt really out of place. And even when I went to do the practical, I was so worried about the way I looked and that people would be judging me. And a lot of that, I know, is my own judgment because of that belief system I have about the way I look not being acceptable and good enough and so on. And so doing, an exam in a gym and thinking everyone's looking at you going, God, what's she doing? She can't be a PT. She's, not thin and she's not muscly and so on. But I, at the same time, I was very passionate about, like you, trying to shift that narrative and be like, no, somebody has to start to change this. I know there are other people out there who are bringing that diversity, and certainly for me now, where I am in my perimenopausal journey, I wouldn't want to be going to the gym and training with some 23-year-old ripped young girl, because I'd be like, oh my God, I'm never ever going to look like that, especially at this age. So I would want to resonate. And do you find that helps, is that people resonate with you and you've got that expertise, as you said, to really support them hitting the goals they've got, whatever those goals might be?
I think in the fitness industry there's this whole narrative of like your body is your business card, and I just think that your knowledge and your experience and what you can do to help people is so much more important, because you can get people that have got the perfect body, and the main reason that will be down to genetics, and potentially it depends, but it's massively to do with genetics. And whereas you might have someone like me who has got different genetics, but I'm really bloody good at my job, and like and you can't look at someone and tell them, and tell what their fitness levels are. You can't look at someone and tell how healthy they are. And I think that this is the thing, is like fitness does not have a look, and it doesn't have to even have a specific goal. It's just about enjoying moving and feeling privileged that you can move, because it is a privilege.
It is, as I'm standing here with a bad back. It's definitely a privilege. I listened to a podcast a few weeks ago with Venus Williams, and I used to work at Nike, and I've heard Venus and Serena both talk, but I hadn't actually heard her talk in this way before. And it was really interesting. She spoke about body image and her size, and she gave an example of once at a press conference when someone had asked her what she was going to do to lose the weight that she put on, and she'd gone back with some answer, basically telling him that it was none of his business and that it was a really inappropriate question to ask. But she was saying, how she on the outside doesn't look like someone who should be a phenomenal athlete, because she's over 6 foot, I think, isn't she? Which I'd never realised she was actually that tall. And her size and shape, and she was saying, I'd put on maybe about £10 or something when he'd asked that question. She said, but I'm 6 foot whatever, and I'm an athlete, and now look how muscly I am, and it was just a point in time. And she said, actually, you couldn't really tell. She said, it wasn't like I was small, and that £10 game was quite noticeable. But it was just, I loved what she is doing, a project with Dove. And it's all about girls and keeping girls in sport and helping girls to have that strong body image, and to know that it doesn't matter what you look like and what your ability is athletic wise, that you can move your body, because moving your body will make you feel good. And I loved how she spoke about it, and I did a bit of a research on their website. It's in partnership with Nike as well, actually. And I was like, oh my God, like we need this to be more mainstream, because we've got to get to the grassroots of it, haven't we, to really make change. I mentioned my daughter, and we're talking about our upbringing and where it's all stemmed from. We have to change this from the ground up, so that kids grow up wanting to be active, wanting to be healthy, respecting who they are, knowing that they're enough because of who they are inside, not what they look like. And that's, I guess, your big ethos, isn't it? That's why you're trying to do and spread your message.
It does feel like sometimes you're sort of swimming upstream, because you've got these strong multi-billion fitness, the diet industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and you're fighting against this narrative and this embedded beliefs, and but it definitely, something does have to change, because as I said before, it can't be normal for people to be discontent with their bodies, because it's just, people bang on about the obesity epidemic. Surely that's a bit more of an epidemic. Again, that's another discussion for another time, but it's complex and there's lots of layers to it, but we need to remove a lot of these barriers to fitness, because it's and I think it's a real issue. It's a real issue.
And what do you say is the biggest change and like benefit someone gets from improving their fitness when they start working with you?
It's like their confidence. And I had a text from a client this morning. She's quite elderly, and she's taking a trip down to London, and she said it's the first time she's ever been able to lift a suitcase onto the overhead. And I was like, that's what we all should be celebrating, like functional fitness, to being able to, I've got other clients that just want to be able to get up and down from the floor easily to play with their grandkids, or I've got, another client who's going to California in October, and they just want to be fit enough to be able to walk, for long distances every day. And it's just, we're all looking at functional fitness and how actually it's going to enhance our lives rather than just change our bodies, because is that actually going to make us happy? Because you know, a lot of the time it doesn't. You know, don't say everybody wants to look good. Everyone wants to feel like they look good. But then it's also having that conversation of like, well, who says looking good is thin? Like, who, you know, where does that come from? Where's that beauty standard coming from again? And, you know, and it's just realizing your worth is so much deeper. And I think the way your body looks is the least interesting thing about you. And I think, you know, I think that's the really rewarding thing that I get from my clients, and the love of exercise, which they've never had before, because it's always been attached to weight loss, or, you know, and they've actually discovering, because on the body image fitness platform, we've got lots and lots of different types of exercise. We've got strength Pilates, we've got burlesque, we've got twerk, we've got kickboxing. Like, there's so many things for people just to try out. And loads of different instructors, and lots of diverse instructors, all different body sizes. And it, yeah. So I think it's just empowering people to know that A, fitness isn't a look, and B, let's engage in fitness to help us with our daily lives and achieve, make our general lives better than what we can do.
Oh, that's brilliant. And everything you said there is so true, like shifting that mindset from fitness being about a look to being about your lifestyle. And that was the big shift that happened for me with my fitness, when I was always exercising to try to lose weight, to look a certain way, is, you know, kind of a punishment. It was like, well, I've got to exercise because I put on weight easily and I do like food and I eat this, to when I really fell in love with it and realised that I just loved that feeling of being strong. And for me, while I've had this back injury, it's been about, 7 months or something now, I haven't been able to lift heavy weights, but even when I've been able to get in and do like 3 kilograms or 4 kilograms, I'm just like, I just love this. It does something mentally. And that was the catalyst in my journey managing anxiety as well. So it's just so powerful. But a big part of why I want to exercise and qualified as a PT is for that future life and being able to be mobile, because I saw with my own mum how she wasn't mobile. You know, she came dependent on a walking stick and then in a wheelchair, and when you lose your mobility, you've really lost a lot of your life and happiness. You know, so we all want a great life, and for many of us, we're looking to a point in our life when we have more freedom after our careers, and we can travel and we can spend time with the people we love and choose what we get to do each day. Well, we need to be strong, fit and healthy to make that happen, don't we? So I love the example you gave of the suitcase there, because God, what a thing to be able to travel independently when you're older and go, I've got my suitcase.
I know. And I think as well, it's what you've said about the mental health aspects of strength training. There's nothing quite as empowering as feeling so strong and being able to go into the gym and like deadlift, you know, these heavy weights. And I personally it helps me feel like, well, if I can do this, I can do anything. And you know, and that, along with rejecting diet culture and knowing that my body is powerful and in the current state that it's in, and I'm not just dedicating my whole life to just shrinking it and taking up the least amount of space possible. And I think it's all just tied in. You know, it's all connected. And I think once we shift our mindset, which does take a lot of unlearning and a lot of time, we can actually become so much happier and healthier and fitter and just enjoy life. I think life's too short to just be wanting to count calories and take up the least amount of space possible.
Exactly. And there's some great stats in there about how many years on average a woman spends dieting and obsessing about weight. And, you know, do you want to get to 75 or 85 and go, oh my God, I've spent 20 odd years of my life obsessing about how I looked? I'm sure that's one of those big regrets a lot of people have, and I often think about that. But so just to wrap up then, Kim, what tips would you give to someone if there were kind of 3, you know, tips for small steps to take for someone to start shifting away from the diet culture and reframing what fitness is about and why working out has so many benefits?
I think it's just being very, very aware about, we talk about diet as in what we eat, but we've got to talk about, that sort of what we're looking at, a mental diet, I suppose, and what we're looking at online and who we're following. And I always just say, if somebody's making you feel worse about your body, then you shouldn't be taking advice from them. Like, you really shouldn't be, because are they actually interested in your health in that case? If there's people that are empowering you, I'd say go follow them, go and take advice from them, and obviously within reason. But I just think that you're going back to that, my tagline of my business: your body's not the problem. And I also, there's a hell of a lot of podcasts, including this one. But there's a lot of podcasts. There's a really, really great one called The Maintenance Phase, which is very educational. They go and they thoroughly research, but it's also very it's really entertaining to listen to. So the Maintenance Phase podcast is great, and I think this is the thing that education really, really understands, because then that builds compassion and understanding. There's lots of different books out there. There's a book called Anti-Diet by Christy Harrison, which is amazing. And just I'd say as well, make sure that if you are on social media, diversify your feed and look at all different types of bodies and abilities, working out. Not just making it one size, because there is very, very clear proof that fitness doesn't have a look. You just need to look at all the contestants in the Olympics, and and it's diverse, fitness and body. And I think it's just the I Weigh podcast is another good one, Jamila Jamil. So there's loads. Once you start looking, you'll find more and more. But I think that education is a really good thing to help with that self-compassion and help kind of shift that mindset.
Yeah, great advice. So we've got the thinking of your diet in a bigger sense as to what it does overall in every sense, including, as you said, like mental. But I like the social media tip there: curate your feed, is how I term it.
Yeah.
Because we're in control of that. So take control. Be mindful of what you are putting in and whether that's helping you to feel the way you want. In education, definitely, and that links to inspiration, doesn't it? That's why we do what we do through our marketing and speaking on a podcast like this, to try and inspire people to have that, question those thoughts and beliefs, and change drives from that point onwards. So maybe you're one of those inspirational people that someone might like to follow. So I'll pop everything into the show notes. But yeah, tell everyone where they can get hold of you and find out more, Kim.
Well, my website's bodyimagefitness.co.uk. That's all one word, Body Image Fitness. Then you'll find all my social media links from there. We've got quite a few different Instagram accounts now, because we've got a lot going on with Body Image Fitness. But we're on Instagram mainly, and Facebook. So I'm sure you'll pop those in the links there as well.
Will do. Yeah, great. But thanks so much for chatting. And as always, I love chatting with you about it, because we share so much on the opinions around diet and fitness. And hopefully someone listening is rethinking their approach to what they eat and moving their body to be strong for the rest of their life. So thank you.
Thank you.